Well, I'd like to welcome the student that's online, Alicia, and also any other students who are watching this to this recording. This is for mental health in the community and a recording by me, Tim Hill, about the assessment 2, which is due at the end of next week on Sunday night at 11:55 p.m. Yes. Okay. So assessment 2 is a case study. So you are given a case study about a particular person, and I'm just going to be flicking over to that now to read it. Yeah. So it concerns a particular person, Sarah, and Sarah's experiencing a number of symptoms or a number of experiences, you could perhaps say, and she's gone to get some help about that. So what the case study is asking you to do with this is to read through this description of Sarah and her circumstances, then refer to the ICD using the link there. This link, I believe, takes you not actually to the latest version of the ICD, but please do use the latest version of the ICD. So what you have to try to do is marry up what you're reading about Sarah and her circumstances versus what the different disorders are and the way they're described, and trying to match the two together. So does Sarah's circumstances sound like this particular disorder? Does it sound like this particular disorder, and so forth? And then you would go through and try to do the closest match which you can. Now, it might be that some of Sarah's circumstances don't perfectly match a disorder, but it's probably an indication that it's not quite the right disorder. Actually, let me put that a different way. If you're reading Sarah's circumstances and her symptoms, and they see that they're just not a really good fit for that disorder, then that disorder probably isn't what Sarah is experiencing. Okay, look for something that seems to well cover what's happening for Sarah. Okay. So,
yeah.
one question that sometimes I get asked about this particular case study is it possible for Sarah to have more than one thing? If you believe it is, then make a case for it. Okay. If you feel like Sarah is suffering from two disorders, then you need to be able to show some evidence that you believe that's true. Okay. In all cases, take it back to the ICD. Here's an important point. Don't use the DSM for this. The DSM isn't what we're looking for. It's the ICD. Okay. What I'm also recommending you do is to read everything that's in the assessment brief, particularly the stuff that's on page 3 of the assessment brief. This shows you how I will be marking for questions. So there's 5 marks available for correct identification of the mental disorder and brief description of the disorder. Okay, if you do that well, you're up for as many as 5 marks. If you don't do that, then you're not going to get any marks for that. Okay, so really make sure that you target what you write around the marks and the way that they're allocated. That's really important. It also means that if you're writing about something that isn't included in this table of how the marks are allocated, that's a good sign, but you're writing about something that's irrelevant and something that you can cut from your essay. Okay, so use this as a guide for your relevance. You could also use this as a guide for how you should allocate the number of words. Okay, so we're looking for 1,500 words, and that's 30 marks. Okay, there's 4 main parts of this, each worth 5 marks. Okay, and they're listed the first 4 things on the marking criteria. So if you've got 1,500 words, each of those is going to be maybe 300 to 400 words. Okay, if you're writing more words for any one of these, or less words, and I mean substantially less words or substantially more words, you're probably misallocating your efforts. Okay, so the second way to use my marking criteria is as a way to allocate your the words in your assignment. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause for a moment. I'm going to ask Alicia if she has any questions, and if she perhaps has any other questions that she feels like you might ask if you were here to ask those questions. So over to you, Alicia.
Okay. In terms of the structure, how, like, what will that look like? Will it be kind of like an essay structure, or is there a structure for a case study that I'm just not aware of that we need to follow?
Yes. So what I'm going to do is ask you to, so for all of you, I'd ask you to look at page 4 of the assessment brief.
Yep, okay. Okay, I can see it.
Okay, but I will actually talk through this in a little bit more detail because there's a couple of other things to it. So yes, you need an introduction. So the introduction, that you write 100 or 200 words of just about a brief summary of what you're going to say in the body.
Yeah.
Then there's also a conclusion at the end, which is very like the introduction, but it's really in the past tense. You know, this is what I've talked about. Again, 100 or 200 words for that. The main part is going to be the remainder of your word count. So, you know, perhaps 1,200 words, let's say. This is where you actually make your argument about what the diagnosis is that Sarah's experiencing, and some of the other aspects of the question as talked about in the marking criteria on page 3.
Yeah.
So because this is an essay, not a report, then you don't use headings, okay? So don't use headings in your report, in what you write.
Yeah.
In assessment 3, which we'll be doing later on, yes, you can use headings there. What you can do if you want to is you can write your essay with headings, then take the headings out before you submit it.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that help, Alicia?
Yep, that helps. And so that would kind of cover the question if I was going to ask about like terminology. So because it's an essay, we're not going to be using the word I think.
No, you can.
We can. Okay.
I'm really glad you asked that question. For these assignments, you can certainly use I think. You can certainly talk in the first person. You don't need to talk in the third person. Yeah.
Okay, so we can talk first person.
Well, yeah, and that's reasonable because you are talking about your own view here.
Yeah. Okay. I always get a little bit confused because I feel like I've been told in essays, you know, sometimes you can't say I think, and then sometimes you can, and then it's just confusing sometimes. Yeah.
And I admit it is confusing, and different essays have different standards that apply to that. But for us, yes, you can always talk about yourself in the first person. I did this. I recommend that. I think this. I believe this. I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Do you have another question, Alicia?
Yep. So in terms of word count,
yes,
I feel like this is another thing that I find confusing depending on teachers and preferences. But with the word count, are references included within that word count, or are they separate?
Okay. This is something that used to trap me when I was writing essays as well. So the 1,500 words begins with the first word of your introduction and ends with the last word of your conclusion, okay? But it also includes any references, so any in-text citations that you use in your write. So, you know, so if you have in brackets Smith, comma, 1990 in close brackets, that's counted towards your word count, okay?
Okay. So,
however,
but the end, keep going, sorry.
So I was going to say the references at the end, they're not included in your word count, okay?
Okay, cool, yep. All right, understood.
Yep.
Okay, do you think that goes across all subjects, or you can only just say it for this one?
Look, only for this subject, you know, I'd ask it in each subject, just to be sure.
Okay.
Just to be sure.
Yeah.
Just on word count, you can go 10% over, 10% under, so 150 words over, 150 words under, without any penalty. And even if you do, the penalty is going to be quite small. One thing to watch though is that, of course, if you're not writing, if you don't use a lot of words, if you're consistently underneath the word count, it probably means you're not covering it in sufficient depth.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're going over the word count, it probably means you're being irrelevant. So
Yeah.
it's certainly possible to answer a question very well within 1,500 words, but you need to be careful about the words you use.
Yeah. Okay. What about a title page? This is another one that I get confused on as well.
Yes, that's good.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. You may have found a title page floating around the institution which you can use if you want to use that. So put your name, student number, the number of words, the subject on the title page, and then begin your essay on a new page.
Okay.
The other thing I want to also insist upon is that everything that you submit with this subject, it needs to go through SafeMark first. So
Is that Turnitin?
That's like Turnitin, but it's a new system we're now using instead of Turnitin. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what you submit needs to go through that before I get to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a good thing for you as well, because it means that if you've inadvertently left in a direct quote without making it a direct quote, this will pick it up for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So please use this as something designed to help you.
Yeah. Okay.
I would also recommend all of you use the Studiosity service that we've made available to you. Studiosity means you can submit drafts of your assignments for checking by a subject matter expert who will return your assessment to you, usually within 24 hours. So it
Oh,
means,
wow.
yeah, so it's great. So submit your drafts to them, get them to check what you've done. They'll make those suggestions, and then if you need to, do it again. So
Okay.
only send something to me after you're really happy with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that Studiosity link is available through, I'm just going to be checking here, through the left-hand side of the Blackboard page, just underneath self-check your assessment.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So Alicia, do you have any other questions that you might ask?
Nope. I think that's all.
All right, sure. Let me quickly talk about referencing. I'm a bit of a stickler for referencing. I think it's important. So why do I think it's important? Well, because I think, firstly, it's a matter of honesty. If you're using the ideas and thoughts of somebody else, you really owe them to acknowledge that in your writing, and you do that through using formal referencing.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do formal referencing, and I've sent out to all of you a document about how to do that. So we use APA version 6 here at Laureate. So use that version to do your referencing.
Okay.
Referencing is something that I really encourage you to get right from the very beginning of your study. If you learn it at the start, then you apply it to everything you do, and you get more marks for everything you do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people just not keep putting it off in the hope that they can just get by and not do referencing properly, because you'll lose
Yeah.
marks with every assessment.
Yeah. Can I just add something about that as well?
Yeah, please do.
There's a lot of referencing tools that I find. I used to use one in particular, and it would always be wrong. And so now I've just had to hand do it at the end, or I actually just do it while I'm doing the assignment.
Okay.
But I just found those citing tools that say that they reference for you can be pretty flawed, just for like other students, just to let them know. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask you, Alicia, which one did you used to use?
It was a website called Cite This.
Okay.
So that was the one that doesn't work. And then there was another one called Zorto,
Yep.
Zorito.
Yep.
And I think that one is actually okay. I just couldn't work it out. But definitely don't use this site. Don't use the site of this website. That one's just not good.
Okay, good. So stay away.
Yeah.
I personally have used Zotero, which I think is the one Alicia is mentioned.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. And it's good?
Yeah, I've been really happy with it. It involves two things. One thing that you sort of like a program you download, but also you need to download something that works with Word, and
Yeah.
it's I found it's been tremendous. It saw me all my way through my masters, saved me hours and hours, and I never could fault it's the referencing that it did. So, you know,
Can you just say how to spell it again?
Zotero.
Okay.
Yep. So recommended and free.
And free. Okay, awesome. Because it is very time consuming typing
Yeah.
it all out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. And
Dot, comma,
that
bracket.
that's right. And I'm still going to be ultra picky at saying, okay, you should have had a full stop here. Or, you know,
Yeah.
actually, I'm probably not. I'm probably not going to be that picky. Actually, it's important you get it right, but I'm not going to make it so hard for you that it's impossible to satisfy it.
Yeah.
But give it some thought anyway.
Yeah.
All right, Alicia, another question. These great questions are great. I hope they're helpful for those of you who are listening at home.
Yeah. Awesome.
Do you have another question?
I swear I just did, but it's just gone.
Okay.
So it mustn't have been that important. I think I pretty much covered anything that I would be asking.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think if anything more comes, do we just if we have other things, I've noticed that there is a thread for
Yes.
assessments.
Yeah.
Can we just go in there and ask a question?
Yes, by all means, and I'll monitor that and answer the questions as quickly as I can.
Okay. All right. Cool.
In terms of turnaround, I like to get things back to you guys as quick as I can. However, I would ask you to bear in mind that I'm actually going to be on holidays. So I'll be marking your stuff on holidays, so I mightn't be as responsive as I might otherwise be.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of if I had anything else which I thought was really important to mention. Look, I think we've covered it pretty much. The last thing I want to say is if you haven't started already, start now. The earlier you start, the better marks you get, because the more chances you get a chance to read through what you've written, and every time you read through, you'll find something you want to change, and that change will give you a better mark.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, look, I might call it quits there. Thanks for staying with the. I'm just going back to the meeting itself. Thank you for staying with the recording. I hope you found it interesting. If you do have any further questions you want to ask, put them in the assessment Q&A discussion board, and I'll try and answer them as quickly as possible. If I haven't had a look at that, and feel free to give me a hurry up. This is the last thing I wanted to mention, actually. If you aren't going to get it done before the due date, and you're not getting it done because of one of the reasons that's a valid reason, and these reasons are listed on the form called the Request for Assessment Special Consideration, which I've sent out to you all. Get that form into me as soon as possible. Do not get it into me after the due date. That does not work. The only cases in which that's acceptable is if you've had some calamity or emergency happen that meant that you couldn't get it in. You need to get this stuff in, this particular form in if you're using it, on the Saturday before it's due, the assessment's due, so 24 hours beforehand. Okay, and what you do, download it, fill it out online, and then upload it and email it to me.
Yeah.
So good luck. I'll see you on the forums. And just also wanted to say the quality of the work that you guys are doing is really good. So keep it up. It's been interesting and stimulating for me. And best of luck.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Tim.
That's okay. Thank you, Alicia. Thanks for joining, and take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, just bye.